Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay Unboxing, reacting to the massive show at the SSE Arena in London. Aired on DAZN in the United States, Sky Sports over on the other side of the pond, and it was a pretty impressive show, to be honest with you. A lot of action. The officials got the calls right, which is always a plus. And in the end, we got a good main event that lived up to the hype, if it wasn't a little bit short, I think we should say. But nonetheless, a good card. Some quick results here in the opener of the show. We had a very slick featherweight in Jordan Gill earning a unanimous decision win over Cesar Juarez. Gill looks solid and very skilled. The concern is, does he have the power to make noise at a higher level? He has only a handful of stoppages in his 20-some-odd fight career. You wonder if he can have the pop that can bail him out if he needs it, that can earn respect of more experienced fighters, and ultimately that can be something of a concern that I'll get back to in a little bit later. The following bout was the debut of Johnny Fisher at heavyweight, who needed less than a round to stop Matt Gordon. He looked decent, but still really not enough footage on him as a professional to give much more than that. Looked good nonetheless with what he had. In junior welterweight action, Gabriel Valenzuela just barely took a majority decision from British fighter Rob Davies Jr. over 10 rounds. While he looked a comfortable winner, Venezuela only received a 94-94 draw on one card and 96-95 on the other two. Solid scrappy bout, but at least the right guy won, especially considering last week when we've had some, let's just call them, controversial calls from the officials. In a fiery welterweight fight, Florian Marku stopped Rylan Charlton, in the 8th frame. It was a very solid fight, probably the best back-and-forth fight of the entire card itself. And Marku had to get off the floor to win, which, it was ultimately a very solid win for him, with some thinking the fight was stopped a bit prematurely, but in the end, Marco picks up the win when the dust settles. And in the main event, European champion at welterweight David Avanesyan retained his gold with a stoppage of previously unbeaten Josh Kelly. Kelly started off very well, but soon had the fight steamrolled out of him as Avanesyan walked through his shots and broke him down. He dropped him in the 6th round as Kelly's trainer Adam Booth threw in the towel. So my takeaways here. Josh Kelly, in my personal opinion, is a perfect example of what I brought up last week and what I continue to bring up when I see some of these slicker fighters coming through the beginning stages of their career. It's cool to have all the moves you can have in the world with angles and twists and turns, and with guys like Mayweather and Lomachenko popularizing defense. It's always a good thing for fighters. I would never say that. However, you have to have the sort of pop that keeps fighters respecting you. That's what I fear with fighters like Hopi Price that we saw last week at the SSE Arena. That's what I fear when I see guys like Jordan Gill. And that's what I feared with Josh Kelly. Even during my prediction, when I picked Kelly to win, my concern was that Avanesyan was going to stick around the entire fight and potentially make the fight a lot closer later on in the fight. In some ways, that's sort of what happened. It just didn't even take that long. And that is because while his knockout percentage is okay, that being Kelly's, the fact of the matter is that's at the early stages of his career where you expect fighters to win by knockout. That's what they're supposed to do. He has probably average at most power and relies much more on movement and skill to win, and that's great. But if you don't have the power to stop a methodical veteran, a tough Russian fighter with experience at a world level from being able to steamroll you, you're going to have a very tough night like he did. And that is something that you can you could see it happening. I think I even tweeted that it just felt as though you could see when he got up from that knockdown in the 6th frame, you could see the confidence draining from his eye. He shook his head looking at the referee almost as if to say, I didn't know it was like that in here. It was just it was one of the more visual looks at a fighter losing confidence you'll see. But again, that's what I concern myself with when I see these slicker fighters. When I see a guy who can punch, my concern is always, what is he going to look like when you're backing him up? When I see a guy who has really solid defense, my concern is, what's he going to look like when he gets hit? And when I see these slicker fighters who use a lot of movement and angles and dimensions, my concern is, what are they going to do when someone just pushes them up against the ropes and says, nah, we're not doing that tonight? Another takeaway I had was the Johnny Fisher debut. Again, a very solid one. And with Otto Wallen versus Dominic Brazil happening later tonight, it got me thinking about the sort of second tier of the heavyweight division, and it's really getting fairly healthy. You have guys like a Daniel Dubois and even Juggernaut and Andy Ruiz, you have a good second tier of heavyweights that Fisher can find himself ultimately fighting in the next couple of years if he continues to stick with it. And while you never know with him, he's had one professional fight thus far in less than a single round of actual action. It is nice to know that you have some young Americans and British heavyweights that are coming through that seem to be exciting, that seem to be in shape, which once wasn't such a marvel, but at heavyweight it now is. And so it's good to know that the heavyweight division might be thriving for the foreseeable future. And as mentioned, Jordan Gill looked phenomenal. I think he was probably not in the fight of the night, but in the performance of the night. A guy who really stuck to a game plan, dug deep when he had to. Again, I'm concerned about the power, but otherwise looked very good. And I think that with now having beat his stablemate in Juarez, I think Gill should rematch Mario Enrique Tinoco of Mexico. That's the one defeat on his record, and allegedly he was very sick and had food poisoning, was advised not even to fight the day of the fight. It would be good for him as a confidence booster and just from a marketability standpoint if he could go back, avenge that loss, and have an ability to say, I've beaten everyone I've faced. I have all of these skills. I've had some good performances back to back. I beat some tough Mexicans, as the Brits so love to brag about. And I think that'd be a very good move for his career moving forward. And then getting him to that European and hopefully, for his sake, ultimately that world level stage. Anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know. How'd you like the show? What stood out for you? Let me know down in the comments. Did you get your picks right or wrong? Would love to hear from you. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB. You can also email me at junboxing@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you, and until next time.